Welcome to Episode 4 of Inside Azure for IT. I'm Erin Chapple, CVP of Azure Core Product and Design. Before we get started, remember, this is part 3 of a 3-part episode. In the first segment, I talked with Jellyfish Pictures about how they create amazing visuals in motion pictures using Azure high-performance computing to accelerate rendering and gain more time for the creative process. And in our second segment, I talked with members of the Azure Quantum team about a project they worked on with the Jet Propulsion Laboratory at NASA. In this segment, I'm excited to talk with Alex Oelling about how Volocopter, a true pioneer that is paving new pathways by offering air taxi and drone services in urban environments, is building a cloud-native solution to integrate with smart cities and existing mobility operations using Azure infrastructure and AI. Hi, Alex. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Inside Azure for IT.
Thanks for having me, Erin.
Now, we all travel as part of doing business, for pleasure, or simply to keep our lives running. And with travel comes challenges, like traffic and delays. And so you may be excited to hear that there are companies today, like Volocopter, that are leading the way with innovation to help transform how we travel. Alex, I have to say, when I read about what you're building at Volocopter, it reminded me of the flying car from the classic American cartoon, The Jetsons. I mean, the idea that electric, self-flying aircraft will become a form of city transit, accessible by operators, by businesses, and the public, it's transformational and sounds too futuristic compared to how we travel today.
That's right, Erin. Our goal is to make urban travel faster, smoother, and more enjoyable. Right now, Volocopter is focusing on 4 main components of the urban air mobility ecosystem. Volocopters, air taxis that fly whisper quiet and emission-free. Voloports, which are places where passengers will board and disembark and where the aircraft can vertically take off and land. A heavy lift drone capable of offering services to a bunch of different industries. And an app that connects everything in the ecosystem, which is my primary area at Volocopter.
That sounds incredible. Cities around the world are always looking for additional sustainable ways to move people from point A to point B. And your work is going to inspire a new way of thinking among cities for a whole new category of transportation. I'm interested in hearing more about your ecosystem and how Azure is powering your suite of services.
We are building an urban air mobility platform called VoloIQ, which will run on Microsoft Azure. Providing urban air mobility services is very complex. We have to build flight paths and integrate them with existing mobility systems in each city. That's why we use VoloIQ to build a digital twin. It's the backbone software of our ecosystem. It leverages cloud-based service-oriented architecture powered by Azure to unite a few things important into one app. First is smart infrastructure management. For operators and cities, VoloIQ will enhance the routing, infrastructure management, and integration into existing cities where mobility services like rideshare have already been established. Next is AI-driven fleet service management, which is necessary for aircraft providers to monitor battery health and predict the need for maintenance on our air taxis. VoloIQ will also help Volocopter scale flight operations. It will actively automate, optimize, and drive urban air mobility infrastructure, routing, and operations. It will enhance in-flight safety and network usage. And finally, the VoloIQ platform will enable seamless user integration. Customers will be able to book and pay for VoloCity air taxis easily and then switch to a cab, e-scooter, or other transport option afterwards within a single platform.
I can understand why having real-time visibility into all of these components is important. Right? Connected systems like this, regardless of industry, typically require a lot of telemetry to ensure different data points are talking to each other in real time. And this telemetry spans from cloud to edge, and that adds complexity, right, in terms of security and scalability. Alex, how are you approaching this at Volocopter?
By running VoloIQ on Azure, we are making the VoloIQ secure, robust, efficient, and scalable. We are using Azure services like IoT device management, IoT Hub, and others. This will help us connect battery charging stations, ground sensors, and ports to the VoloIQ cloud. We can load weather data models into the database and simulate scenarios to support decision making. Decisions such as on flight dispatching and replaying flight data for post-flight analysis. We also use it to transfer data points like vehicle speed, health status, and battery state to the cloud for live monitoring. We've tested Azure with our electric heavy lift drone, the Volo drone. We observed that near real-time telemetry dashboards are possible with Azure data pipelines. We've also seen enhanced user management with Azure Active Directory.
It's amazing to see how IoT can be used across so many different kinds of businesses. Whether you work in transportation like you, or factory operations, retail, or even healthcare, the ability to connect, analyze, and automate from edge to the cloud really creates many opportunities for innovation. Now, AI is another logical extension that many modern apps use, and you're building this into your capabilities as well.
We are. We plan to use artificial intelligence across various aspects of our operations, ranging from predictive maintenance, checking motors, systems, structure, etc., to enabling autonomous flights. For autonomous operations, AI will be used for things like object detection, automated landing, and decision-making during flights. Our AI will be continuously trained through the initial piloted phase of operation and use real-life data to train and refine a variety of aircraft models. This will eventually enable us to replace a pilot on board and take the leap forward to autonomous flights.
Now, autonomous vehicles and aircraft are some of the most complex examples of AI. In other scenarios, companies can use AI to automate repetitive tasks or scale customer support and communications via bots and virtual agents, or even generate more relevant recommendations to improve the customer experience. But here, as you just said, these systems have to coordinate multiple processes to simulate the reasoning that human operators use. Now, you touched on the need for this platform to be secure. Aside from protecting the personal data that customers provide when they book and pay for flights, what other security considerations do you have to account for?
We intend to operate autonomously in aviation, so we need to protect against security threats with our platform. We see great potentials for optimizing the security of our infrastructures with Microsoft Defender for Cloud. Inside our infrastructure as a service environment, it provides a continuous visibility, prevention, and remediation capabilities for threats and bad configurations. By using Cloud Defender Intelligence with the CI/CD pipeline series of steps, we are able to see risks in real time, which can then be holistically solved in our infrastructure as code. I think for most businesses, taking a cloud-first approach is the ideal way to protect against security risks, compared to starting from scratch with a product of our own. At Volocopter, we know that our expertise lies in eVTOL technology and creating a software solution for safe and efficient flight operation. This is not the same as being experts in software infrastructure services. Therefore, it makes more sense for us to bring Microsoft experts to develop an aerospace cloud solution efficiently.
That's a great point. And it's also a great example of how implementing the right cloud-based infrastructure solutions can free up IT to focus on different areas of the business. When you have the full support of IT to really drive that innovation rather than focusing on operations, that translates into real business impact. And it's partnerships like this, right? Industry experts and Microsoft working together to push the boundaries of what technology can enable. That really takes digital transformation to the next level.
Yes. In our case, as a Microsoft project partner, Volocopter will assess and give feedback on how the Azure cloud infrastructure can meet the VoloIQ needs for commercial operations. Azure will then enable the VoloIQ's flight and service support for our aircraft models, the VoloCity, the Volo drone, and the VoloConnect, alongside ground infrastructure support for VoloPorts in real time. This will be a pioneering feat for the industry to build a secure cloud platform for mission-critical decision-making.
I love to hear this. Not only is Volocopter launching a new category of transportation that uses Microsoft technology, but we get the chance to evolve Azure's cloud infrastructure to support new scenarios like this. Now, Volocopter is a digital native business started in the cloud. Considering that cloud-based infrastructure is what enables Volocopter to run this entire ecosystem, you must have a unique point of view on the value that cloud technology offers. When you think about the more traditional businesses that are just beginning that shift to the cloud, Alex, what advice comes to mind?
At Volocopter, we understand that it's cloud technology and software, like the ones we discussed in the VoloIQ project, that will be the real game changers when it comes to launching and scaling urban air mobility services in cities around the world. In order to bring this novel service to life, it is essential to bring in innovation drivers like Azure that offer a secure space and the tools for getting this innovative digital platform off the ground. Moreover, through continuous updates and upgrades of Azure, companies can always stay a few steps ahead and use this dynamic updating process to tune up the efficiency, performance, and scalability of both current and future use cases.
Alex, it was wonderful to have you on the show. I can't wait to see you bring urban air travel to life.
Been great, thank you.
Now, don't forget to check out the other segments of this episode of Inside Azure for IT. We talk with Jellyfish Pictures about how they're using Azure high-performance computing, and we also talk to the Azure Quantum team about a project they worked on with NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. For all our videos, deep dives, and skilling content, head to azure.com/InsideAzureForIT. I'll see you next time.